listener to Myth and Moonlight, where we travel together through stories that calm the mind and soothe the soul. This is your guide Elara, inviting you to join me on tonight's gentle adventure into a world of deep relaxation and peaceful rest. Over the years, I've found that certain stories have a special way of helping us disconnect from the bustling world around us. They create a bridge between our busy thoughts and the quiet sanctuary of sleep that awaits us. I've crafted tonight's journey with care, weaving elements that speak to the part of us that yearns for both adventure and tranquility. Tonight we'll be venturing deep beneath ancient mountains, into forgotten halls of stone where echoes of the past still whisper their secrets. We'll follow a journey of discovery that mirrors our own quest for peace and understanding in our lives. As we travel through these hidden realms, you might find yourself connecting with aspects of this journey in unexpected ways, recognizing perhaps that the treasures we seek often reveal themselves when we learn to be still and listen. There's a gentle wisdom in the stone halls we'll explore together, a reminder that beneath the surface of our everyday experiences lie deeper truths and unexpected beauty. The ancient dwarven kingdom we'll visit tonight holds secrets about patience, perseverance, and the courage to look within. These are qualities that serve us well, not only in our waking hours, but also as we transition toward restful sleep. So, find a comfortable position now, wherever you are. Allow your body to be fully supported, and know that for the next while, your only task is to listen and drift. There's nowhere else to be, nothing else to do, just this moment, this story, and the gentle journey towards sleep that we'll take together. Let's begin by taking a moment to truly arrive in this space you've created for rest. Close your eyes if they aren't already, and take a deep, full breath in through your nose. Feel your chest and belly expand with this nourishing air, and then release it slowly through your mouth, feeling a wave of initial relaxation flow through you. That's right, just like that. Perhaps you've had a day filled with activity, conversations, decisions, movements from one task to another, or perhaps it was a quieter day, yet still filled with thoughts and feelings that kept your mind active. In either case, you might recognize that familiar feeling of carrying the day with you as you prepare for rest. Just as our dwarf prince in tonight's story carries the responsibilities of his kingdom, we too carry our worlds with us. And just as he must learn to set down his royal burdens to discover what truly matters, we now practice setting aside the weight of our day. Now, let's bring gentle awareness to your body, starting at the top of your head. Notice any tension you might be holding in your scalp, your forehead, around your eyes. And with your next exhale, invite that tension to soften and release. Feel the muscles in your face becoming smooth and relaxed. Your jaw might gently part, releasing any tightness there. Your tongue can rest comfortably in your mouth, moving down to your neck and shoulders, areas where we often hold so much tension without realizing it. Bring your attention to any tightness or holding in these areas. And again, with your exhale, allow your shoulders to drop away from your ears, feeling heaviness and warmth beginning to flow through these muscles. Each breath deepens this pleasant heaviness. Continue this gentle wave of relaxation down through your arms, feeling it flow like warm honey through your upper arms, your elbows, lower arms, wrists, and finally reaching your hands and fingers. Notice how your hands might feel slightly warmer now, perhaps tingling with increased circulation as they relax fully. Your chest chest and torso can soften with each breath. Feel your inhale creating gentle expansion and your exhale bringing release and softening. Your back is fully supported, each vertebra settling more comfortably against the surface beneath you. The muscles along your spine can release their holding now as you're completely supported. The relaxation continues flowing downward through your hips, your thighs, becoming heavier and warmer with each breath. Your knees, calves, ankles all softening, releasing any tension or holding from the day. And finally, this wave reaches your feet and toes, which might feel distant now, pleasantly heavy and warm. Bring your attention now to your breathing, which has likely already begun to slow and deepen naturally. There's no need to control or change your breath. Simply observe its natural rhythm. Notice the cool air as it enters through your nose, filling your lungs, and then the warmer air as you exhale, carrying away tension and bringing deeper relaxation with each cycle. With each inhale, you might imagine breathing in calm, peaceful energy, and with each exhale, releasing anything that doesn't serve your rest. Inhaling tranquility, exhaling tension, inhaling peace, exhaling any restlessness. Your breath becomes a gentle rhythm, rocking you toward deeper relaxation. Now, begin to visualize the setting for our journey tonight. You're standing at the base of an ancient mountain range as dusk approaches. The mountains rise majestically before you, their peaks catching the last golden rays of sunlight, while their massive bases fade into deep blue shadow. These aren't harsh, jagged mountains, but old ones, with rounded shoulders and gentle slopes covered in deep green forests of pine and fir. The air here is remarkably clear and fresh, carrying the crisp scent of pine and subtle earthy fragrances from the forest floor. Each breath feels purifying and nourishing, filling you with a sense of vitality, even as your body continues to relax deeply. There's a coolness to the air that feels refreshing against your skin. Listen to the gentle sounds of this mountain twilight. In the distance, a small stream tumbles over smooth stones, creating a continuous peaceful murmur. Closer, the soft rustle of leaves in the light evening breeze adds a gentle rhythm. Occasionally, you might hear the distant call of a bird returning to his nest for the night, or the soft hooting of an early owl welcoming the approaching night. The ground beneath your feet feels solid and supportive, smooth stone that carries the day's warmth. You can feel this gentle warmth radiating upward through your feet, bringing comfort and grounding as you begin walking towards the mountain. Each step feels perfectly balanced, neither too light nor too heavy. The path beneath you seems to welcome each footfall. The scents around you deepen as you approach the ancient stone doorway set into the mountainside. There's the sweet, resinous fragrance of pine sap, the clean mineral smell of stone, and underneath, a hint of something metallic and mysterious, the scent of the deep earth itself. As you near the entrance, you detect traces of oil from old lanterns, and perhaps a whisper of hearth smoke from deep within. If you were to lick your lips now, you might taste the freshness of the mountain air, perhaps with the faintest hint of sweetness from wildflower pollen carried on the breeze. The atmosphere holds a kind of pristine purity that feels nurturing and deeply restful. As we prepare to enter the mountain and begin our story, consider what it means to journey inward, both into this ancient kingdom and into the quieter spaces of your own mind. There's a special kind of wisdom that can only be found in these is yours to experience in whatever way feels right for you. You might find yourself drifting in and out of the story, and that's perfectly fine. Your mind always knows what it needs for deep rest. You can allow yourself to follow the narrative, or simply float on the sound of my voice. There's no wrong way to experience this time of relaxation. You're exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do. As we transition now into our main story, feel yourself crossing the threshold into the Mountain Kingdom. The temperature grows slightly warmer, embracing you like a gentle blanket. The sounds shift to the soft echo of ancient halls, and the rhythm of your breath aligns with the deep, slow breathing of the mountain itself. Let yourself be carried now, effortlessly, into our tale. Prince Torgin of the Iron Deep clan stood before the ancient mural, his broad fingers tracing the faded carvings that depicted the glory of his ancestors. He was not tall by human standards, standing just under 5 feet, but his frame carried the characteristic sturdiness of dwarven royalty. His auburn beard, meticulously braided with silver and sapphire clasps, reached nearly to his waist, a testament to his 47 years. Young for a dwarf, yet old enough to feel the weight of responsibility that had been placed upon his shoulders. The prince wore simple garments today, a deep blue tunic embroidered with subtle silver patterns of mountains and stars, leather trousers that bore the comfortable wear of frequent use, and soft leather boots that made little sound on the stone floors, only the silver circlet resting upon his brow, set with a single blue stone that matched his thoughtful eyes, marked his royal status. Torgin preferred it this way. Unlike his father, King Dornin, he had never found comfort in this heavy ceremonial armour and ostentatious displays of wealth that many associated with dwarven royalty. The Hall of Remembrance where he stood stretched before him in solemn grandeur. Massive pillars of polished granite rose to support a ceiling lost in shadow far above, each column carved with the intertwining patterns of dwarven artistry, geometric designs that flowed with an organic grace that belied their mathematical precision. Soft light emanated from glowing crystal sconces set at intervals along the walls, casting a warm amber glow that made the mica flecks in the stone floor sparkle like distant stars. The air in this ancient hall carried a complex mixture of scents: the mineral coolness of stone, the faint sweet oil used to polish the carvings, the distant hint of forge fires that burned perpetually in the lower levels, and the subtle, indefinable scent of age itself. Despite the vastness of the space, the hall maintained a pleasant warmth, heated by the ingenious system of thermal vents that the ancient dwarven engineers had incorporated into the very structure of the kingdom. Iron Deep Kingdom had been carved into the heart of Mount Caradur over 2,000 years ago. What had begun as a simple mining operation had grown into a vast network of halls, chambers, workshops, and dwellings that spanned 7 major levels within the mountain. The uppermost levels housed the royal quarters, council chambers, and great halls for gatherings and celebrations. Below these lay the residential districts where most of the kingdom's 12,000 citizens lived and worked. Further down were the craftsmen's quarters, treasuries, and storerooms, and at the deepest levels accessible to all were the great forges and workshops where the famed dwarven craftsmen created works of unparalleled beauty and function. But there were said to be even deeper levels, ancient places that had been sealed long ago when the first king, Torgin's ancestor, had discovered something unexpected in the mountain's depths. What exactly had been found there was lost to history, remembered only in fragments of song and cryptic references in the oldest texts. These sealed areas had become the stuff of children's tales and fireside legends in the centuries since. Tolkien's thoughts drifted to his father, now in his 380th year, whose health had begun to fail over the past season. The old king spent most days in his chambers, attended by healers who spoke in hushed tones of declining strength and the need for rest. The subject of succession had been raised with increasing frequency in council meetings, though Tolkien had thus far deflected such discussions. Despite his age and training, he felt unprepared for the crown that would eventually come to him. The soft sound of footsteps on stone brought Tolkien back to the present moment. He drew a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill his lungs, and exhaled slowly, centering himself as he had been taught by Balder, the old meditation master. The prince allowed his shoulders to relax, released the slight furrow that had formed between his brows, and turned to greet whoever approached. Still, communing with the ancestors, my prince. The voice belonged to Nithra, royal historian and Tolkien's former tutor. The elderly dwarven woman moved with a deliberate slowness, leaning on an intricately carved walking stick of dark wood. Her silver hair was pulled back in a simple style, and her eyes, though clouded with age, remained sharp and observant. "Just thinking, Nithra," Tolkien replied with a warm smile. "These halls have a way of inviting contemplation." Nithra nodded, coming to stand beside him before the ancient mural. "Indeed they do. Our ancestors built not just with stone and metal, but with intention and reverence." She gestured toward a section of the carving depicting dwarves working in forges. They understood that true creation comes from stillness first, from listening to the stone, to the metal, to the mountain itself. Tolkien nodded, having heard variations of this wisdom throughout his education. Yet today, the words seemed to carry a different weight, as if addressing some unspoken question within him. "The council meeting went poorly, I take it?" Nithra asked, her tone gentle but direct. The prince sighed, his breath creating a small cloud in the cool air. "No worse than usual. Lord Graumin continues to push for expanded mining operations in the eastern tunnels, despite the instability reported by the geomancers. Lady Fauna argues we should seal those passages entirely, which Graumin claims would bankrupt his clan's holdings. And so it goes, round and round, with father too weak to decisively end the debate. And where does Prince Tolkien stand on the matter?" Nithra asked, her eyes studying the mural rather than him. Tolkien paused, considering. "I find myself uncertain. Both arguments have merit. Both sides believe they're acting in the kingdom's best interest. A balanced perspective is commendable in a future king," Nithra said, "though eventually decisions must be made." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, the gentle ambient sounds of the kingdom providing a soothing backdrop, distant hammers ringing on metal, the soft hum of ventilation shafts carrying fresh air from the surface, the occasional echo of voices or footsteps from adjoining chambers. "Do you remember the tales I told you as a child?" Nithra finally asked. "About the mountain stone and its key?" Tolkien smiled at the memory. "Of course, the magical heartstone of Mount Caradur, said to be connected to all living rock in the realm, and its key, hidden away by Durin himself when he sealed the deep smile. Perhaps, though I've always found it curious how often truth hides within tales we dismiss as merely fanciful. She tapped her walking stick against a particular section of the mural, one depicting the first king holding what appeared to be a crystalline object. Some stories endure because they carry something essential, even if the details become embellished. Through the ages, Torgin studied the carving with renewed interest. There was something in the way the ancient artist had depicted the crystal, a sense of depth and radiance that seemed to catch the light differently than the surrounding stone. The histories say that Durin found something in the mountain that changed him. Nithra continued quietly. He returned from the deep places after 7 days alone, speaking of revelations and a new understanding of our relationship with the stone. It was after this that he established the rites of listening that our stoneworkers still practice today. The prince ran his fingers over the carved image of the crystal. I've always found comfort in those practices, he admitted. The silence, the focusing of attention, the sensation of connecting with something larger than oneself, as have generations of our people. Nithra nodded. Perhaps there is value in revisiting these old stories, especially in times of transition and uncertainty. With that, she patted his arm gently and turned to leave. I'll leave you to your contemplation, my prince. The ancestors have much to teach, if we remember how to listen. Torgin watched her go, her words lingering in his mind like a subtle fragrance. He returned his gaze to the mural, particularly to the depicted crystal and the expression of profound peace on the carved face of Durin. Something stirred within him, a curiosity, a sense of connection to this distant ancestor who had also faced decisions that would shape the kingdom's future. As he stood in the quiet hall, Torgin became increasingly aware of his own breathing, the gentle rise and fall of his chest, the coolness of the air as it entered his nostrils, the slight warming as he exhaled. He noticed the solid feeling of the stone floor beneath his feet, the comfortable weight of his body, the subtle movements of air against his skin. These physical sensations anchored him in the present moment, even as his thoughts explored possibilities from the ancient past. In this state of heightened awareness, the prince could almost imagine he heard the mountain itself, not with his ears, but with something deeper, more primal, a rhythm, slow and steady, like the breathing of a great slumbering being. For a brief, transcendent moment, Torgin felt connected to Mount Carador in a way he couldn't quite explain, as if the boundary between his body and the surrounding stone had momentarily blurred. The moment passed, leaving him with a lingering sense of wonder and a new question forming in his mind. What if there was more to the old stories than he had assumed? What if the mountain stone wasn't merely a metaphor, but something real, something that could perhaps help him understand his role and responsibilities in a deeper way? As the day's final bells echoed through the halls, signalling the transition to evening, Torgin made a private decision. He would visit the archives tomorrow and look more closely into these old tales, not out of mere curiosity, but with a growing sense that they might contain wisdom his kingdom needed in these uncertain times. The following morning found Torgin in his private chambers, completing his daily rituals with mindful attention. His quarters were spacious, yet understated, reflecting his preference for functional comfort over opulent display. The main room featured walls of polished granite, inlaid with veins of silver ore that caught the light from crystal lanterns. A hearth of masterfully crafted stonework provided warmth. The fire within, burning with a steady blue flame, fed cross-legged on a cushioned stone bench, running a finely crafted comb through his beard, carefully working out any tangles before rebraiding the intricate pattern that denoted his lineage and position. This daily practice had become almost meditative for him over the years, a time to centre his thoughts and prepare for the day ahead. The familiar weight of the comb in his hand was comforting, the smooth handle worn to a perfect fit for his fingers after years of use. It had been a gift from his mother on his 20th birthday, carved from a single piece of amber-coloured heartwood and inlaid with tiny sapphires that matched the colour of his eyes. He could still recall her words as she presented it. A prince's appearance reflects the order of his thoughts. Take time each day to create this order, and decisions will flow more clearly. As he worked, Torgin became aware of the varied sounds that formed the morning symphony of Iron Deep. From beyond his windows came the distant ringing of hammers as the day shift began in the forges, the rhythmic sound as familiar and essential as his own heartbeat. Closer, he could hear the soft footsteps of servants in the adjoining rooms, preparing his breakfast and laying out documents that would require his attention. From somewhere far down the corridor came the melodic sound of a training chant as the royal guard practiced their morning drills. A gentle knock at the door signalled the arrival of Garrick, his personal attendant for the past 15 years. "Enter," Torgin called, setting aside his comb and straightening his tunic. Garrick stepped into the room with a bow, his movements efficient and practiced. Though over 60 years old, the attendant maintained the straight posture and clear eyes of one who took pride in physical discipline. His neatly trimmed beard was almost entirely grey now, but his hands remained steady as he presented a tray of morning tea. "Good morning, my prince," Garrick said, placing the tray on a small table of polished basalt. "Cook has prepared spiced porridge with honey and dried berries this morning, along with fresh bread from the night baking. Will you take it here or in the study?" "The study, I think," Torgin replied, accepting the small ceramic cup of tea Garrick offered. "I plan to review some historical texts this morning before the council meeting." He savoured the first sip of the tea, a special blend of mountain herbs and fungi that grew only in the higher caverns near the surface. The taste was earthy and complex, with notes of moss, mushroom, and a subtle sweetness that lingered pleasantly. The warmth spread through his chest, bringing both comfort and alertness. "Very good, my prince. Also, Master Healer Lauren has sent word that the king had a restful night and wishes to see you this afternoon." Garrick's tone remained neutral, but Torgin detected the slight rise of his eyebrows that suggested there was more news. "And," Torgin prompted, taking another sip of the fragrant tea, "and Lady Vorna has requested a private audience before the council meeting. She was most insistent, though she wouldn't state her business to me." Now there was a definite note of disapproval in Garrick's voice. Like many of the older generation, he found Lady Vorna's direct manner and progressive ideas somewhat discomforting. Torgin nodded thoughtfully. "Please inform Lady Vorna I'll see her in the small audience chamber half an hour before council." He finished his tea and rose, feeling the pleasant stretch of muscles as he stood to his full height. "Now, let's see about that breakfast. I find myself particularly hungry this morning." In his study, as he ate the hearty porridge, Torgin reviewed the day's documents. Production reports from the various guilds, diplomatic correspondence from the human settlements in the valley below, and a detailed analysis of grain reserves that would sustain the kingdom through the coming winter. Each report he read with careful attention, making notes where needed, enormous crystal shafts that channeled daylight from the mountain surface. The light created shifting patterns on the stone floor, honey-coloured squares that moved slowly across the intricate geometric patterns of the carpet. Torgin found himself pausing occasionally to appreciate this simple play of light and shadow, finding a moment of peace in the midst of his duties. After finishing his administrative tasks, Torgin made his way to the Great Archives, located 3 levels below the royal quarters. The journey took him through various sections of the kingdom, each with its own character and atmosphere. He passed through the artisans' quarter, where workshops lined both sides of a wide thoroughfare. Here, dwarven crafters of all ages pursued their trades with focused dedication. A master glass blower was creating delicate vessels of swirled blue and green. Her cheeks puffed out as she breathed life into molten material. Nearby, a jewelsmith used tiny tools to set precious stones into an elaborate silver necklace, his magnifying lenses making his eyes appear owlish and enormous. The air here was warm and carried the mingled scents of hot metal, melted wax, polishing oils, and the distinctive tang of creative effort. Several crafters paused in their work to bow respectfully as Torgin passed, which he acknowledged with nods and the occasional greeting. One elderly woodcarver, whose family had served the royal household for generations, beckoned the prince to examine a recently completed piece, a miniature representation of the mountain itself, with tiny doors and windows showing the kingdom within. The detail was extraordinary, down to the minute figures of dwarves going about their daily activities. Beautiful work, Master Thronin, Torgin said sincerely, marvelling at the delicate craftsmanship. You've captured not just the appearance, but the spirit of Iron Deep. The old craftsman's face crinkled with pleasure. Thank you, my prince. It helps that these hands have been learning the mountain's shape for over 200 years now. He ran gnarled fingers lovingly over the wooden peak. The mountain speaks to those who listen long enough. Those words echoed in Torgin's mind as he continued his journey, descending a broad spiral staircase that connected the upper residential levels with the kingdom's middle sections. The staircase was a marvel of engineering, carved from the living rock in a perfect helical shape, with a central column that housed one of the main ventilation shafts. As he descended, Torgin trailed his fingers along the smooth stone banister, polished by the touch of countless hands over centuries. The cool, solid feel of the stone beneath his palm was grounding, connecting him to all those who had travelled this path before. At the base of the staircase lay the common plaza, the largest open space within the mountain. Here, hundreds of dwarves went about their daily business. Merchants sold their wares from stone stalls. Children played games of skill with polished pebbles. Elders sat on benches sharing stories and observations. 4 major thoroughfares intersected at this plaza, leading to different sections of the kingdom. Fountains burbled pleasantly at each cardinal point, the water catching light from massive crystal installations overhead that brilliantly illuminated the space with refracted daylight. Torgin paused at one of these fountains, enjoying the cool mist that occasionally drifted from the sparkling water. He watched a group of young dwarves practicing a traditional dance under the guidance of a white-bearded instructor who kept time by striking a small drum. Their movements were precise yet joyful, feet stamping rhythms on the stone floor that seemed to resonate with the very mountain itself. From the plaza, Torgin took the eastern passage, which led to the kingdom's educational and historical quarter. The crowds thinned here, and the ambient noise softened to a respectful hush. The walls in this section were lined with elaborate mosaics depicting key moments from dwarven history: the founding of Iron Deep, great battles against ancient enemies, significant discoveries and innovations, periods of prosperity and challenge. Walking this corridor was like moving through time itself, a reminder of the rich tapestry of experiences that had shaped his people. Finally, Torgin arrived at the massive bronze doors of the Great Archives. 2 guards stood at attention, their ceremonial axes crossed before the entrance. Upon seeing the prince, they uncrossed their weapons and bowed deeply. "Good morning, your highness," said the guard on the right, a female dwarf with intricate knotwork tattoos visible on her forearms. "Master Archivist Vorik is already within. Shall I announce you?" "That won't be necessary, Thala," Torgin replied, recognizing the guard from previous visits. "I know my way." The guards pulled open the heavy doors, which moved silently on perfectly balanced hinges, revealing the grandeur of the archives. Beyond, the space was cavernous, with ceiling heights unusual for dwarven architecture. Circular levels rose upward and descended downward from the central entry platform, connected by graceful spiral staircases and mechanical lifts. Each level housed thousands of volumes, scrolls, tablets, and crystal memory stones, organized in a complex system understood fully only by the archivists who devoted their lives to maintaining this repository of knowledge. The lighting here was softer than in other parts of the kingdom, designed to protect the ancient texts from damage. Glowing fungi cultivated specifically for this purpose provided a gentle blue-white illumination that was easy on the eyes, yet sufficient for reading. The air carried the comforting scent of old parchment, leather bindings, stone tablets, and the special oils used to preserve them all. Torgin stood for a moment, taking in the peaceful atmosphere of this sacred space. The archives always affected him this way, creating a sense of connection to something vaster than himself, a continuity that stretched back through generations. Here, surrounded by the accumulated wisdom and experiences of his ancestors, the present moment seemed both small and precious, a link in an unbroken chain extending from the distant past into the unwritten future. With a deep breath that filled his lungs with the knowledge-scented air, Torgin began descending the steps toward the lower levels where the oldest records were kept. His footsteps echoed softly as he made his way down, passing archivists and scholars who looked up briefly from their studies to acknowledge his presence with respectful nods. In the awareness of this tranquil space, Torgin became mindful of the weight of his body moving downward, the controlled muscle movements that kept his balance on the spiral staircase, the slight adjustments his feet made with each step. The repetitive motion became almost meditative, and he found his mind clearing, preparing to engage with the ancient wisdom he sought. On the 3rd level below the entrance, Torgin found Master Archivist Vorik examining a large map spread across a stone table. The elderly dwarf was so absorbed in his study that he didn't notice the prince's approach until Torgin was standing directly across from him. "My prince!" Vorik straightened with a start, adjusting the multiple pairs of lenses that were strapped to his forehead in various configurations. His beard was tucked into his belt to keep it from brushing against delicate documents, and his fingers were stained with the special inks used for restoration work. What an unexpected pleasure How may the archive serve you today? Torgin smiled at the archivist's enthusiasm. I'm interested in researching some of our oldest histories, Master Vorik. Specifically, anything relating to the mountain stone and its key. Vorik's bushy eyebrows rose nearly to his hairline. The mountain stone. Now that's a subject I haven't heard inquired about in decades. He tilted his head curiously. May I ask what prompted this interest? A conversation with historian Nithra yesterday, Torgin replied, running his fingers thoughtfully along the edge of the stone table. She mentioned it in reference to some challenges the kingdom is currently facing. I realise I know little about it beyond childhood stories. Ah, Nithra, Vorik nodded with understanding. She always did take those old legends more seriously than most. He flipped down a particular set of lenses and peered at Torgin with magnified eyes. Well, you've come to the right place. We have several accounts, though they vary considerably in detail and reliability. Vorik secured the map he'd been studying with small weighted stones, then gestured for Torgin to follow him deeper into the archives. As they walked, the archivist called out to an apprentice who was shelving scrolls nearby. Brill, bring refreshments to the contemplation alcove, please. The prince and I will be consulting the pre-unification texts. They wound their way through narrowing paths between towering shelves until they reached a quiet corner where several small study spaces were carved into the wall itself. Each alcove contained a comfortable stone bench, a reading table with an adjustable crystal light, and was partially enclosed for privacy while remaining open to the larger space. Vorik selected one and ushered Torgin inside. Please make yourself comfortable, my prince. I'll gather the relevant materials. With that, the archivist disappeared into the labyrinth of knowledge, his soft footsteps quickly fading. Torgin settled onto the bench, which was cushioned with soft fabric woven from the wool of mountain goats. The alcove had been designed with both functionality and comfort in mind. The table was at the perfect height for reading without hunching. The light could be adjusted to eliminate shadows, and the curved walls created excellent acoustics that somehow muted the already quiet sounds of the archives beyond while amplifying those within the space. Closing his eyes for a moment, Torgin noticed the change in the air here, cooler than the upper levels with a distinct mineral quality that spoke of deep stone. His breathing naturally slowed to match the tranquil atmosphere, each inhale bringing the scent of ancient parchment and stone dust, each exhale releasing a little more of the tension he hadn't realised he was carrying. Soon, the apprentice Brill arrived with a small tray bearing a stone pitcher of water, a cup, and a plate of simple seed cakes. The young dwarf, barely into his 20s, with a beard that was just beginning to fill out properly, set these items carefully on the table with a respectful bow. Thank you, Brill, Torgin said warmly. The apprentice blushed slightly at being directly addressed by the prince. An honour, your highness, he mumbled before backing away. Torgin poured himself in some water, noting its exceptional clarity and the slight mineral taste that indicated it came from one of the deeper springs. As he sipped, Master Vorik returned, his arms laden with various materials. Several bound volumes of different sizes, a cylindrical container that likely held scrolls, and what appeared to be stone tablets wrapped in protective cloth. Let's begin with the most straightforward accounts, Vorik said, carefully arranging the materials on the table. He selected a medium-sized book bound in dark blue leather and opened it with practiced care. This is the Chronicle of Founding, compiled compiled about 500 years ago from earlier sources. It contains one of the clearest references to Tutsi, mountain stone. He turned the book so Tolkien could see the pages, which were illuminated with intricate decorative borders in gold, silver, and deep blue ink. The text was written in formal dwarven script, the letters precise and angular. Here, Vorik pointed to a passage. It states that King Durin, after 17 days of delving deeper than any before him, discovered a chamber of perfect resonance, wherein lay the heart of the mountain itself, a crystal of such clarity and power that it sang to him of the mountain's secrets and the deep wisdom of stone. Tolkien leaned forward, reading the passage himself. The formal language was beautiful, but somewhat obscure, and Durin, in his wisdom, knew that such power must be protected from those not ready to bear its knowledge, and so he fashioned a key of 3 metals combined, and sealed the chamber with craftwork that no simple force could breach. Yes, Vorik nodded enthusiastically. And it continues. The key he entrusted not to any single keeper, but to the mountain itself, saying that when need was greatest and the heart purest, the way to the key would reveal itself to one worthy of finding it. Tolkien felt a strange resonance with these words, as if they had been waiting for him all these years. He became aware of his heartbeat, steady and strong in his chest, and of a subtle warmth spreading from there throughout his body. This sounds more like legend than history, he said, though without dismissal in his tone. The distinction wasn't as clear to our ancestors, Vorik replied, selecting one of the wrapped tablets next. He carefully unfolded the protective cloth to reveal a rectangular piece of dark green stone covered in an older form of dwarven script, the characters more rounded than modern writing. This is much older, dating to within a century of Durin's reign. Is a fragment of what appears to be a personal account, possibly from one of Durin's close companions. Tolkien studied the ancient writing, which required more concentration to decipher. After returning from the deep place, he read, "Slowly our king was changed. Where before he was often quick to anger and firm in judgment, now he listened more than he spoke. He began the practice of stone sitting, teaching that within perfect stillness one could hear the voice of the mountain itself. Some thought madness had touched him until he demonstrated how this listening improved our craft beyond all previous mastery." As Tolkien read these words aloud, he noticed a subtle change in the acoustics of the alcove. His voice seemed to resonate in an unusual way, as if the stone walls themselves were responding to the ancient account. A pleasant tingling sensation began at the base of his spine and travelled upward, bringing with it a heightened awareness of his surroundings. The cool solidity of the bench beneath him, the texture of the stone tablet under his fingertips, the gentle movement of air against his skin. Vorik was pulling out one of the scrolls from the cylindrical container now, carefully unrolling it and securing the edges with small weights. This contains a technical description of the chamber where the mountain stone was supposedly kept. It's written in the old engineering notation, so it's quite dense, but essentially it describes a perfectly spherical room carved from a single piece of granite with acoustic properties that could amplify certain frequencies while completely damping others. The description sparked Tolkien's imagination. He could almost visualize this perfect sphere of stone, could almost hear the specific resonance it might create. His fingers began to tap unconsciously on the table edge, finding a rhythm that somehow felt connected to his breathing, and thus subtle sounds around him. What about the key? eyes lit up at the question. Ah, now we enter more speculative territory. He selected another book, this one smaller and bound in faded red leather. This contains collected wisdom, sayings attributed to Durin after his discovery. Many are cryptic, but there's one that's often interpreted as referring to the key. He flipped through the pages until he found what he was seeking, then read aloud. 3 strengths combined create the path: the unyielding structure, the flowing connection, and the preserving guardian. When these 3 are balanced in the seeker, the key will answer to their touch. A shiver ran through Torgin's body as these words were spoken, as if some deep part of him recognised their significance. In his mind's eye, he suddenly saw a flash of something, a small object resting in a weathered palm, gleaming with 3 distinct metallic sheens. Iron, silver, and gold, he whispered, not knowing where the certainty came from. Vorik looked up sharply. That's one common interpretation, yes. Iron for strength, silver for connection, and gold for preservation. His gaze became keenly interested. Did Nithra suggest this to you yesterday? Torgin shook his head slowly, feeling slightly dazed. No, it just came to me as you read the passage. He took a deep breath, feeling the cool archive air fill his lungs. As he exhaled, he noticed his hands had become very warm, almost as if they were remembering the touch of metal. Fascinating, Vorik murmured, studying the prints with newfound curiosity. You know, there's another account, considered mostly allegorical by most scholars, that suggests the key would recognise the touch of Durin's true heir. Is he not necessarily his direct descendant, but one who embodied his wisdom and connection to the mountain? Torgin felt a strange mixture of excitement and trepidation stirring within him. Part of him wanted to dismiss these feelings as fanciful, yet there was an undeniable resonance occurring, as if long-dormant knowledge was awakening. He became intensely aware of the mountain all around him, not just intellectually, but physically. He could sense its vast presence, its ancient patience, its deep stability extending far below where they sat. Is there anything about where Durin might have hidden this key? He asked, his voice steady despite the unusual sensations flowing through him. Vorik hesitated, then reached for the final volume, a small book bound in plain brown leather that looked remarkably ordinary compared to the other materials. This journal was found during renovations of the old meditation chamber about 200 years ago. It's anonymous, but the writing style and references suggest it belonged to someone in Durin's inner circle. He handled this book with particular reverence. It contains only one possible reference to the key's location, and it's quite enigmatic. He opened to a marked page and turned the book so Torgin could read for himself. The handwriting was flowing but precise. The ink faded to a warm brown with age. He placed it where only stillness would reveal it, where 3 pathways meet beneath the gaze of ancestors, not buried in earth nor locked in craft, but hidden in plain sight for those with eyes to truly see. As Torgin read these words, a memory surfaced from his childhood. Sitting cross-legged in the old meditation chamber with his father, learning the basic techniques of stone listening. The chamber was rarely used now, having been supplanted by newer facilities, but it was one of the oldest intact spaces in the kingdom, and at its centre stood an ancient statue of Durin, his stone eyes gazing down at a triangular pedestal where 3 meditation cushions could be placed, where 3 pathways meet beneath the gaze of ancestors. The connection felt both obvious and elusive. like trying to remember a dream upon waking. Torgin closed his eyes, allowing the sensation to flow through him without forcing it into words. His breathing deepened naturally, and he found himself entering a light meditative state similar to what he practiced during stone listening. In this receptive state, he became aware of subtle vibrations travelling through the stone beneath them, the living pulse of the mountain, carrying echoes of distant activities throughout the kingdom. Mining operations far below, water flowing through hidden channels, the collective footsteps and voices of thousands of dwarves going about their daily lives, all created a complex symphony of vibrations that most never noticed consciously. The old meditation chamber, Torgin finally said, opening his eyes. I believe that's where we should look first. Vorik's expression was a mixture of surprise and scholarly excitement. An interesting interpretation. The chamber does sit at the junction of three of the oldest tunnels, and the statue of Durin has been there since the kingdom's founding. He carefully began rewrapping the stone tablet. When do you wish to investigate this possibility? Torgin considered the question as he helped the archivist gather the materials. The vibrations he had sensed through the stone seemed to intensify subtly, as if in encouragement. Today, he decided, after I meet with my father. A sense of gentle urgency had awakened within him, not anxious or demanding, but clear and purposeful. As they restored the precious texts to their proper places, Torgin felt a growing awareness of connection to these ancient words, to the mountains surrounding them, to the lineage of kings stretching back to Durin himself. Something was awakening, both within him and in the very stone of Iron Deep. Whether it was merely his perception changing, or something more mysterious, he couldn't yet tell. But he felt, with increasingly clarity, that finding the key to the mountain stone was somehow vital to addressing the challenges his kingdom now faced. With each breath, this certainty settled more deeply into his awareness, bringing with it a calm determination and a sense of rightness that flowed through his body like warm honey. Whatever lay ahead, he would face it with openness and the growing stillness he now carried within. That afternoon, after a brief but tender visit with his ailing father, who had seemed unusually clear-headed and had spoken cryptically of listening to the stone when others can only hear their own voices, Torgin made his way to the old meditation chamber. He had declined Vorik's offer to accompany him, feeling that this initial exploration should be undertaken alone. The ancient meditation space was located in a quiet section of the middle levels, away from the busy thoroughfares and workshops. As Torgin approached, he noted how the ambient sounds of the kingdom gradually faded, replaced by a peaceful silence that seemed to envelop him like a comfortable blanket. The air grew noticeably cooler and carried a clean mineral scent. The entrance to the chamber was a simple archway carved with intricate knotwork patterns that had no beginning or end, a traditional symbol of eternity and interconnection. No doors had ever been installed here. The space was always open to any who sought its tranquility. Torgin paused at this threshold, taking a moment to centre himself and set aside the various concerns that had occupied his mind throughout the day. He took a deep breath in, feeling the cool air fill his lungs completely. As he exhaled slowly, through slightly parted lips, he consciously released tension from his shoulders, allowing them to drop into a more natural position. Another breath in, and he relaxed the muscles of his face, his brow smoothing, jaw softening. With each breath, he approximately 40 feet in diameter, the ceiling rose in a gentle dome, its apex adorned with a crystal formation that refracted the light from wall sconces into subtle patterns across the floor. The walls were polished granite of a deep charcoal grey, with thin veins of silver and gold catching the light in mesmerising ways. The floor featured an intricate mosaic of polished stones in shades of blue, green and purple, arranged in concentric circles that radiated outward from the centre of the room. At that central point stood a life-size statue of Durin, the Delver, carved from a single piece of deep red granite. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, capturing not just the physical likeness of the first king, but somehow conveying his legendary wisdom and connection to the stone. His eyes, inlaid with chips of crystal quartz, seemed to hold knowledge, yet remained kind and inviting. Before the statue was the triangular pedestal Torgin remembered from childhood, its three sides facing outward toward different points of the room. Cushions that once would have been placed on each side had long since been removed, leaving only the smooth stone platform. As Torgin approached the centre of the room, his footsteps made almost no sound on the polished stone floor. The quality of silence here was different than anywhere else in the kingdom. Not empty or dead, but somehow rich and full, as if the air itself was charged with potential. His breathing naturally slowed and deepened in response to this atmosphere, becoming a gentle rhythm that matched the subtle pulsing of distant heart. Standing before the statue of his ancestor, Torgin noticed something he hadn't as a child. How the three sides of the pedestal aligned perfectly with three doorways, set equidistant around the circular wall. These smaller archways led to tunnel passages that extended further into the mountain in different directions. According to the histories, these were among the first tunnels excavated when Iron Deep was founded, where three pathways meet beneath the gaze of ancestors. The words from the journal echoed in his mind. Torgin circled the statue slowly, studying it with new eyes. Durin was depicted in a simple robe rather than royal regalia, his hands open and extended slightly forward in a gesture of offering or invitation. His beard was intricately carved, flowing down to his waist in braids and free-flowing sections that seemed almost to move in an unfelt breeze. Coming full circle, Torgin faced the statue again and noticed how the light from the ceiling crystal created a subtle illumination around Durin's head, almost like an aura. Following an intuition, he stepped onto the triangular pedestal and stood directly before the statue, looking up into those crystal eyes. From this vantage point, the room's acoustics changed noticeably. The already profound silence deepened further, while paradoxically, certain sounds became more distinct. His own breathing, the soft brush of his clothing as he moved, even the steady rhythm of his heartbeat seemed audible in this perfect stillness. "I seek understanding," Torgin whispered, not having planned to speak, but finding the words rising naturally to his lips. "I seek the key to deeper wisdom." His voice created an unusual pattern of resonance in the chamber, the sound neither echoing nor falling flat, but rather seeming to permeate the very stone around him. As the last vibration faded, Torgin felt a subtle shift in the air pressure, as if the room itself had taken a breath. Acting on pure instinct now, he placed his right hand on the statue's open palm. The stone was neither cold nor warm, but rather seemed to match his own body temperature exactly, creating a sensation of continuation rather than contact, as if his flesh and the stone were made of the substance in different forms. A gentle vibration began to flow from the statue into his palm, travelling up his arm and spreading throughout his body. It wasn't alarming, but rather deeply familiar, like recognising a voice not heard since childhood. The vibration settled into a steady rhythm that synchronised perfectly with his heartbeat, creating a profound sense of connection and rightness. Torgin closed his eyes, allowing this sensation to flow through him without resistance. His breathing slowed further, becoming deep and regular. With each inhale, he felt as if he were drawing in not just air, but some essential energy from the stone itself. With each exhale, tension melted from his muscles, leaving them warm and pleasantly heavy. Behind his closed eyelids, patterns of light began to form, not random, but structured, geometric shapes flowing and transforming with mathematical precision. As he observed these patterns without trying to control them, they gradually coalesced into a clear image. The triangular pedestal beneath his feet, but viewed from above, with 3 lines of energy flowing from its points towards the 3 doorways. Understanding dawned with gentle clarity. The pedestal itself was significant, not just as a place for meditation, but as a marker or guide. The key would be found along one of these 3 pathways, but which one? As if in answer to his unspoken question, the vision shifted. The 3 pathways illuminated sequentially in his mind's eye. First, the northern passage glowing blue, then the southeastern passage glowing silver, and finally the southwestern passage glowing gold. Blue, silver, gold. The colours seemed significant, connected somehow to the 3 metals he had intuited earlier: iron, silver, and gold. The unyielding structure, the flowing connection, and the preserving guardian. When Torgin finally opened his eyes, he felt remarkably refreshed, as if he had enjoyed hours of restful sleep rather than minutes of meditation. The chamber appeared unchanged, yet somehow more vibrant, the colours of the mosaic floor richer, the veins of precious metal in the walls more distinct. He stepped back from the statue, his hand tingling pleasantly where it had touched the stone palm. With newfound certainty, he turned toward the northern archway, the one his vision had shown glowing blue. This would be his first exploration, taking a final deep breath of the chamber's peaceful air. He walked with measured steps toward the passage. The northern tunnel was narrower than the main corridors of Iron Deep, requiring Torgin to walk alone rather than beside a companion. The walls here showed more obvious signs of age, the tool marks of ancient miners still visible in places, the stone worn smooth in others from countless hands brushing against it over centuries. Light was provided by rare luminous fungi that grew in recessed niches, casting a soft blue-white glow that required no tending. As he walked, Torgin maintained the deep, rhythmic breathing he had established in the meditation chamber. Each breath helped him remain present and aware, noticing details he might otherwise have missed. The subtle changes in temperature as he proceeded deeper into the mountain, the barely perceptible incline of the floor, the way sound carried differently in this older passage. The tunnel curved gently to the right, following what must have been a natural feature in the mountain structure. The air grew slightly warmer and carried new scents, a hint of metal, a touch of water, something unidentifiable but pleasant that reminded Torgin of summer evenings above ground. After walking for perhaps 10 minutes, he reached a point where, passage widened into a small circular chamber. Unlike the grand formal spaces of the kingdom, this room felt intimate and organic, as if it had been discovered rather than created. The ceiling was lower, the walls less perfectly finished. 7 smaller passages branched off from this central point. Torgin paused, unsure which way to proceed. His earlier certainty wavered as he faced these multiple options. He closed his eyes again, seeking the guidance that had seemed so clear in the meditation chamber. Taking slow, deep breaths, he focused his awareness on the stone beneath his feet, imagining roots extending downward, connecting him to the living mountain. As his awareness expanded, he began to notice subtle differences in the air flowing from each passage. From one, the third opening to his right, came a breeze that carried a distinct mineral scent and felt somehow more vital against his skin. Without opening his eyes, Torgin turned toward this sensation, allowing it to draw him forward like an invisible thread. When he did open his eyes, he found himself facing a passage that appeared slightly different from the others. The stone around its entrance contained veins of a dark blue mineral he recognized as azurite, often found in proximity to iron deposits. Following this passage, he noticed the blue veining continued along the walls, becoming more pronounced as he advanced. The tunnel descended now, the decline gentle but steady. The quality of sound changed as well, his footsteps creating longer, deeper reverberations that suggested he was approaching a larger space. The air grew noticeably warmer, carrying hints of earth and distant water. After another few minutes of walking, the passage opened suddenly into a cavern that took Torgin's breath away. Unlike the constructed spaces of Iron Deep, this was clearly a natural formation that had been only minimally altered by dwarven hands. The chamber was roughly oval, perhaps 100 feet across at its widest point, with a ceiling that rose in dramatic stalactites of varying sizes and colours. But what dominated the space was a pool of water, so still it appeared to be solid. A perfect mirror, reflecting the crystalline formations above. The water was clear, but deeply blue, glowing with an inner light that seemed to pulse very slowly, like the breathing of a slumbering giant. Around the pool's edge ran a narrow path of smooth stone, just wide enough for a single person to walk comfortably. Torgin stood at the chamber's entrance, allowing his eyes to adjust to the different quality of light here. Unlike the rest of the kingdom, which relied on crystals, fungi, or flame for illumination, this cavern was self-luminous. The walls, ceiling, and especially the pool itself generating a soft blue radiance that created no shadows. The temperature was pleasantly warm, and the air carried a complex mixture of scents. Mineral-rich water, the clean smell of wet stone, and something else that reminded Torgin of thunderstorms. The atmosphere felt charged with a gentle energy that raised the fine hairs on his arms and created a pleasant tingling across his skin. Moving carefully, Torgin began to circle the pool, his gaze drawn repeatedly to his mirror-like surface. Basalt reflection was so perfect that it created the illusion of an identical cavern below, a symmetrical world accessible through this liquid portal. As he walked, he noticed that his footsteps made almost no sound, absorbed somehow by the unusual acoustics of the space. Halfway around the pool, Torgin came upon a small alcove cut into the cavern wall. Within it stood a stone pedestal similar to the one in the meditation chamber, though smaller and shaped like a perfect cube rather than a triangle. Atop this pedestal lay a single object, a disc of what appeared to be about 4 inches in diameter and half an inch thick. The disc was inscribed with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as Torgin looked at them, never quite resolving into recognisable symbols, yet conveying a sense of profound meaning. The surface of the metal wasn't the dull grey of ordinary iron, but had a lustrous blue-black sheen that caught out and reflected the ambient light of the cavern. Approaching the pedestal, Torgin felt the gentle vibration he had experienced earlier intensify slightly. His heart rate increased, not from exertion or fear, but from a sense of recognition and anticipation. This was what he had been guided to find. One piece of the key to the mountain stone. With a deep breath to centre himself, Torgin reached out and placed his palm flat on the iron disc. Immediately, a wave of sensation flowed up his arm, cool at first, then warming rapidly as it spread through his body. Images filled his mind, veins of iron ore running through the mountain like blood vessels, the careful mining and refining of the metal, the skillful hands of ancient smiths working it into tools and structures that would endure for centuries. He understood now, not intellectually, but viscerally, why iron represented the unyielding structure. It was the framework, the foundation, the essential support that made all else possible. In his mind's eye, he saw the iron bones of the mountain, providing strength and stability, allowing life and community to flourish within its protective embrace. As these insights flowed through him, Torgin felt the disc grow warmer beneath his palm. When the warmth reached a pleasant intensity, there was a soft click, and the iron disc released from the pedestal. He lifted it carefully, surprised by how light it felt, despite its apparent density. Cradling it in both hands, he sensed that it was now somehow attuned to him personally, as if it had recognised his touch and responded to it. Torgin carefully placed the iron disc in an inner pocket of his tunic, where it rested comfortably against his chest. He could still feel its gentle warmth through the fabric, like a living presence accompanying him. With a final look at the mysterious blue pool, which seemed to pulse once as if in farewell, he began retracing his steps toward the meditation chamber. The return journey seemed shorter somehow, the passages more welcoming and familiar. Torgin's breathing remained deep and even, his body moving with natural grace despite the growing sense of pleasant heaviness in his limbs. The iron disc against his chest created a focal point of warmth that spread outward with each heartbeat, reinforcing his sense of connection to the mountain all around him. When he finally emerged into the circular meditation chamber, Torgin noticed that the quality of light had changed. The wall sconces now burned with a slightly golden hue, rather than their usual white brilliance. The statue of Durian seemed to regard him with approval, those crystal eyes containing a new depth that hadn't been visible before. Approaching the central pedestal again, Torgin withdrew the iron disc from his pocket and held it before him. In the end, this light, the intricate patterns inscribed on its surface, resolved into a clear image, a stylized mountain with 3 paths leading to its heart. One of these paths now glowed with a subtle blue luminescence, while the other 2 remained unlit. Understanding dawned with gentle clarity. He had found the first of 3 pieces, the iron representing structure and foundation. 2 more remained, silver for connection and gold for preservation. The vision he had received showed those pieces lying along the southeastern and southwestern passages, but that would be for another day. For now, Torgin felt a deep contentment and certainty that he was on the right path. The pleasant heaviness in his body reminded him that he had been exploring for hours, and rest would be needed before continuing his quest. With careful reverence, he returned the disc to his pocket and made his way back toward the royal quarters, carrying with him not just the physical piece of the key, but a new understanding of his connection to Iron Deep itself. His footsteps were unhurried, yet purposeful, his breathing deep and regular. The warmth from the disc spread throughout his body, creating a cocoon of peaceful energy that seemed to both protect and guide him. Each inhale brought clarity. Each exhale released any remaining tension. By the time he reached his chambers, Torgin was in a state of profound, calm alertness, fully present, yet deeply relaxed, ready for the dreams that would surely come to him this night. The next morning, Torgin awoke feeling remarkably refreshed, despite dreams filled with images of winding passages and glowing stone. The iron disc still rested against his chest where he had placed it before sleep. Its warmth, a constant, comforting presence. As he performed his morning rituals with mindful attention, he found his movements flowing with unusual grace and precision, as if the metal had somehow aligned his body more perfectly with itself. After a light breakfast of honey-drizzled porridge and mountain tea, Torgin once again made his way to the ancient meditation chamber. The kingdom was beginning its day around him. Crafters opening their workshops, merchants arranging their wares, the day guard replacing their night counterparts at various posts. Several dwarves nodded respectfully as he passed, perhaps noting something different in his bearing, but politely refraining from comment. The meditation chamber welcomed him with its perfect silence, the air cool and still against his skin. The statue of Durin seemed to watch with patient eyes as Torgin approached and once again stepped onto the triangular pedestal. This time, he didn't need to touch the statue to feel the connection. The iron disc in his pocket pulsed with gentle warmth, creating a resonance that spread throughout the chamber. Torgin closed his eyes and focused on his breathing, allowing his awareness to expand outward into the stone around him. The vision from yesterday returned with greater clarity. 3 pathways leading from this central point, each corresponding to a different metal. The northern path glowed blue with the iron he had already found. Today, he would follow the southeastern passage, which his intuition told him would lead to the silver component of the key. Opening his eyes, he turned towards this passage with quiet determination. This tunnel was noticeably different from the northern one, slightly wider, with walls of a lighter coloured stone that contained occasional sparkles of mica. The luminescent fungi here produced a silvery white light that created beautiful patterns of reflection of the mineral inclusions. As Torgin walked, he maintained a state of relaxed awareness, noting the sensations of the cool air against his skin, the solid stone beneath his feet, the gentle rhythm of his breathing. The iron disc against his chest continued to emit a pleasant warmth that seemed to expand with each step deeper into the mountain. This passage descended more steeply than the northern one had, requiring Torgin to pay closer attention to his footing. After several minutes, the tunnel opened into a series of smaller connected chambers, each with unique formations of crystal and stone. Water played a prominent role here. Small springs emerged from cracks in the walls, forming rivulets that joined together into narrow streams flowing deeper into the mountain. Following these waterways intuitively, Torgin found himself moving fresh scent of mineral-rich water and the subtle sweetness of the crystalline formations. Tiny droplets condensed on his skin and beard, creating a pleasant cooling sensation that balanced the warmth emanating from the iron disc. After passing through a particularly narrow section where the passage required him to turn sideways, Torgin emerged into a breathtaking grotto. Unlike the still reflective pool of the iron chamber, this space was defined by movement and flow. Dozens of small waterfalls cascaded down tiered rock formations into a central pool, from which numerous channels radiated outward like the spokes of a wheel. The water itself seemed charged with energy, glowing with a soft silver luminescence that illuminated the entire chamber. The sound was complex and beautiful, a symphony of different tones created by water falling from various heights onto different surfaces. Some drops produced clear, bell-like tones, while others created deeper, resonant notes, and still others a gentle, sustained hiss, like distant rainfall. Torgin stood for a long moment, simply absorbing the beauty and harmony of this place. The flowing water created patterns of ever-changing light on the walls and ceiling, like liquid silver in constant, graceful motion. The air felt alive against his skin, each breath bringing moisture and energy into his lungs. As he circled the dusty central pool, Torgin noticed that the water moved in an unusual way, not chaotically, but in precise patterns that suggested deliberate design rather than natural formation. Looking more closely, he observed tiny channels carved into the stone floor, guiding the water into intricate spiral patterns before it exited through the radiating channels. Following one particular stream that seemed to pulse with slightly brighter light, Torgin made his way to a small island-like formation in the midst of the flowing water. Here, atop a pedestal similar to the one that had held the iron disc, he found what he had been guided to seek, a disc of pure silver, gleaming in the ambient light. Like its iron counterpart, this disc was inscribed with patterns that seemed to shift and change as he observed them. But where the iron patterns had conveyed structure and stability, these suggested movement, connection, and flow. They reminded Torgin of river systems seen from above, or perhaps the way blood vessels branch through a living body. With reverent care, he reached out and placed his palm on the silver disc. The sensation was immediate and profound, a cool, liquid feeling that flowed up his arm and throughout his body, creating pathways of connection between parts of himself he hadn't previously recognized as separate. In his mind's eye, he saw networks of relationship between different sections of the kingdom, between dwarves and the mountain that sheltered them, between past, present, and future flowing together in one continuous stream. He understood now why silver represented the flowing connection. It was the medium through which separate elements became part of a greater whole, the principle that allowed individual strength to become collective wisdom. The silver showed him how all things affected all other things, how isolation was ultimately an illusion, and how true power came from harmonious relationship rather than dominance. As these insights settled into his awareness, Torgin felt the silver disc cool further beneath his palm, then warm slightly before releasing from its pedestal with a musical tone, like a struck bell. He lifted it carefully and was struck by how different it felt from the iron, where that had been surprisingly light despite its appearance of density. This felt almost weightless, yet somehow substantial, as if it contained energy rather than mass. When he brought the silver disc near the iron one in his pocket, both metals vibrated subtly, creating a harmonious resonance that he felt rather than heard. Taking both discs in his hands, he noticed they were exactly the same size and thickness, with complementary patterns that seemed designed to interact with each other in some way he didn't yet understand. Carefully stowing both discs in his inner pockets, Torgin took a final moment to appreciate the beauty of the silver grotto. The flowing waters seemed to gesture farewell as he turned to make his way back to the meditation chamber, carrying with him not just the physical pieces of the key, but a deeper understanding of connection and relationship. The return journey through the crystal passages felt more fluid now, his body moving with the natural rhythm of the flowing water he had left behind. The weight of the iron disc was balanced by the lightness of the silver, creating a pleasant equilibrium that made his steps both grounded and buoyant. His breathing continued deep and regular, each inhale bringing clarity, each exhale releasing any tension. When he emerged once again into the meditation chamber, Torgin noticed that the light had shifted once more, now containing both the blue tones from yesterday and the silvery radiance of the grotto he had just visited. The statue of Durin seemed more animated somehow, those crystal eyes containing depths that invited further exploration. Approaching the central pedestal, Torgin withdrew both discs and held them before him. In the combined light, their inscribed patterns became clearer still, the iron showing structure, the silver showing connection, both together revealing a more complete image of the stylized mountain with its three paths. Two paths now glowed, one blue, one silver, while the third remained unlit, awaiting the final piece of gold. Torgin knew without doubt that tomorrow would bring the completion of his quest. The southwestern passage would lead him to the gold component, representing preservation and guardianship. For now, though, he felt content with what had been revealed. Each piece brought not just progression toward the complete key, but deeper understanding of himself and his kingdom. Returning the discs to his pocket, he left the meditation chamber with measured steps. The afternoon was advancing, and he had council duties to attend to. Yet, he carried with him a new perspective on these responsibilities, seeing now the structures of governance and the connections between different factions with fresh clarity. The challenges that had seemed so daunting just days ago now appeared as natural patterns, requiring balance rather than problems demanding solutions. As evening approached, Torgin visited his father again. Finding the king sleeping peacefully, the healers reported improvement in the old dwarf's condition. His breathing stronger, his colour better than it had been in weeks. Torgin sat quietly by his bedside for a time, one hand resting gently on his father's arm, feeling the connection between them grow stronger with each breath they shared. Later, in his own chambers, Torgin placed the two discs side by side on a small table before his bed. In the soft lamplight, they seemed to converse with each other, the patterns shifting subtly as if exchanging information. He watched them for a time before sleep claimed him, his breathing slowing to match the gentle pulse of light that passed between iron and silver, structure and connection, foundation and flow. His dreams that night were vivid and meaningful. Not the usual fragmentary images, but coherent narratives, showing him perspectives beyond his own. He walked through Iron Deep, seeing through the eyes of miners, crafters, elders, and children, experience the kingdom as both ancient and new, eternal yet constantly changing. And throughout these dreamscapes, he felt the presence of the mountain itself, vast, patient, and alive in ways he was only beginning to comprehend. Morning came with golden light filtering through the crystal shafts into his chambers. Torgin awoke, feeling even more refreshed than the previous day, his body humming with balanced energy. The 2 discs on his bedside table gleamed in the morning light, their patterns momentarily still, but ready to dance again when touched. After completing his morning rituals and taking a light breakfast, Torgin once more made his way to the meditation chamber. The kingdom buzzed with slightly more energy today. It was market day in the common plaza, and many dwarves were preparing for the weekly gathering. Torgin moved through the increasing activity with calm focus, his presence recognized, but his purpose unknown to those he passed. The meditation chamber received him with familiar silence, though today it felt expectant rather than merely peaceful. The statue of Durin seemed almost to smile as Torgin approached the central pedestal. The iron and silver discs in his pockets pulsed with warmth and coolness, respectively, creating a pleasant, alternating rhythm against his chest. Without needing to close his eyes this time, Torgin turned confidently toward the southwestern passage, the one his vision had shown glowing with golden light. This tunnel was different yet again from the previous 2, wider and taller, with a ceiling that arched gracefully overhead. The stone here was a warm amber colour with occasional veins of darker material running through it, unlike the blue fungi of the northern passage or the silver crystals of the southeastern one. This tunnel was illuminated by actual flame, small oil lamps set in niches along the walls. The flames burned with unusual steadiness, giving off a golden light and a subtle fragrance that reminded Torgin of sun-warmed pine. The air here was the warmest of the 3 passages, embracing him like a summer afternoon. It carried complex scents. The oil from the lamps, yes, but also something reminiscent of ancient parchment, aged wood, and precious resins. Each breath felt nourishing and preserving, filling him with a gentle vigour that made his steps both relaxed and purposeful. This passage neither ascended nor descended, but maintained a perfectly level path deeper into the mountain. The walls were decorated with subtle carvings, not the elaborate scenes found in the kingdom's public spaces, but simple, elegant patterns that drew the eye and calmed the mind. Many of these incorporated spirals and concentric circles, suggesting growth, time, and the cyclical nature of existence. After walking for perhaps 15 minutes, the passage widened further, the ceiling rising into a dome supported by slender columns of the same amber stone. The space beyond was unlike anything Torgin had seen in either of his previous explorations. A vast circular chamber that appeared to be a repository of knowledge and memory. The walls were lined with thousands of niches, each containing scrolls, books, tablets, and strange crystalline devices he didn't recognize. Freestanding shelves, arranged like the spokes of a wheel, filled the main floor space, likewise laden with collected wisdom. At the centre of it all stood a great tree, not living, but fashioned of metal, with such skill that every leaf and bark texture had been perfectly rendered. This tree rose nearly 30 feet towards the apex of the dome ceiling, its branches spreading to create a canopy of golden leaves that caught and reflected the light from hundreds of oil lamps set throughout the space. The trunk and larger branches branches appear to be of bronze or some similar alloy, while the smaller branches transition to silver, and the leaves themselves were undoubtedly pure gold, each one individually crafted and unique. Torgin stood in awe at the entrance to this magnificent library. Unlike the natural beauty of the iron pool or the dynamic energy of the silver grotto, this space spoke of careful preservation and accumulated wisdom. The air was perfectly still, as if time itself moved differently here. Each breath filled him with a sense of continuity and perspective, his own concerns momentarily falling into their proper place within the vast sweep of history. Moving reverently among the shelves, Torgin noticed that the organisation was unlike that of the kingdom's regular archives. Rather than being arranged by subject or chronology, these materials seemed grouped according to some deeper pattern he couldn't immediately discern. Yet there was definite order here. Nothing haphazard or arbitrary about the placement of even a single scroll. As he approached the central tree, guided by the gentle pulsing of the iron and silver discs against his chest, Torgin began to understand. This place preserved not just information but context, the living web of meaning that connected isolated facts into wisdom. The tree itself was a perfect symbol of this principle, roots drawing up sustenance from the past, trunk providing structure in the present, branches and leaves reaching toward future possibility. At the base of the tree, nestled among stylized metal roots that spread outward into the floor, Torgin found what he had been guided to seek, a disc of pure gold gleaming with warm radiance in the ambient light. Like its iron and silver counterparts, this disc was inscribed with intricate patterns that shifted and changed as he observed them. These patterns reminded him of tree rings, river deltas, and the lines that appear in aging faces, all markers of time and experience preserved and made meaningful. With deep respect, Torgin reached out and placed his palm on the gold disc. The sensation was profoundly different from either previous experience. Not the structural strength of iron, nor the flowing connection of silver, but a warm, encompassing presence that seemed to extend his awareness beyond the immediate moment. Images filled his mind. Generations of dwarves living and working within the mountain, knowledge being discovered and preserved, traditions adapting while maintaining their essential meaning. He understood now why gold represented the preserving guardian. It was the principle that maintained continuity while allowing growth, that held the essence of things, even as their forms evolved. The gold showed him how true preservation wasn't static, but dynamic. Not resistance to change, but guidance of it toward harmonic development. As these insights integrated with those gained from the iron and silver, Torgin felt the gold disc warm significantly beneath his palm before releasing from its setting with a rich, resonant tone that seemed to sustain itself indefinitely. He lifted it carefully, noticing how it felt both heavier than the silver and lighter than the iron, with a density that suggested concentrated meaning rather than mere physical mass. When he brought the gold disc near the other two in his pockets, all three metals began to vibrate in harmony, creating a chord of perfectly balanced tones. Taking all three discs in his hands, he observed how they were identical in size and thickness, with patterns that complemented each other in ways that now seemed obvious and inevitable. Looking up at the golden tree that rose above him, Torgin felt a surge of gratitude for the wisdom it represented and protected. This library contained treasures beyond counting, yet he understood that the true value lay not in the physical materials themselves, but in the living understanding they made possible. The key he now held, complete in his hands, was not just a means of accessing the mountain stone, but a symbol of the balanced wisdom needed to use it properly, with a respectful nod to the silent librarians of this timeless space, whether they were present in forms he could perceive or not. Torgin turned to make his way back to the meditation chamber. The 3 discs created a pleasant weight in his hands, their combined energies flowing through his body with each step and breath. The return journey through the amber passage felt both longer and shorter than before, time itself seeming to flow differently as he carried the complete key. His body moved with natural grace, each step perfectly balanced between the grounding force of iron, the connecting flow of silver, and the preserving awareness of gold. His breathing continued deep and measured, each cycle bringing greater integration of the insights he had gathered. When he emerged for the 3rd time into the meditation chamber, the light had transformed completely. The space now glowed with a harmonious blend of blue, silver, and gold radiance that seemed to emanate from the very stones themselves. The statue of Durin stood transformed in this light, no longer a mere representation, but a presence that conveyed both welcoming and expectation. Approaching the central pedestal, Torgin held the 3 discs before him. In the combined light, their patterns aligned perfectly to reveal the complete image of the stylized mountain with its 3 paths, now fully illuminated in blue, silver, and gold, all converging at a central point that pulsed with white light. As he stood contemplating this unified image, Torgin felt a subtle shift in the stone beneath his feet. The triangular pedestal began to rotate slowly clockwise, though he maintained his balance effortlessly. As it turned the 3 discs in, his hands grew warmer and began to draw toward each other as if magnetically attracted. Following this natural movement, Torgin brought the discs together. They connected with a soft click, edges aligning perfectly to form a single larger disc, with the 3 metals arranged in a spiral pattern from center to edge. Gold at the core, then silver, then iron at the periphery. As they joined, a vibration passed through the combined disc and into Torgin's hands, then throughout his entire body. The rotation of the pedestal stopped when it had turned exactly 120 degrees from its original position. Before Torgin, a seam appeared in the previously solid stone base of the statue, revealing a cylindrical opening exactly the size of the combined disc. With perfect clarity of purpose, Torgin placed the completed key into this opening. It fit precisely, settling into place with a satisfying click. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then a series of musical tones sounded from within the statue itself, rising in pitch and complexity until they merged into a single, sustained note of extraordinary beauty. The statue's eyes, those chips of crystal quartz, began to glow with inner light. The hands, previously open in a gesture of offering, slowly moved together, palms pressing against each other in a position of focus and integration. The entire chamber resonated with energy that flowed through the walls, floor, and ceiling in visible waves of blue, silver, and gold light. Then, silently and smoothly, the statue began to slide backward, revealing a passage that had been hidden behind it. This new opening was was unlike the three Torkin had explored previously. A perfectly circular tunnel lined with a material that seemed neither stone nor metal, but something that combined properties of both. It glowed with soft white light that invited entry while conveying profound significance. Torkin stood at this threshold, feeling the culmination of his quest approaching. The 3 journeys he had taken had prepared him for this moment, not just by providing the physical key, but by awakening in him the balanced understanding needed to use what he would find beyond. He took a deep breath, centering himself in the present moment, then stepped with quiet confidence into the revealed passage. The circular tunnel extended before Torkin, gently curving downward in a perfect spiral. Unlike the previous passages he had explored, this one contained no decorative elements, no carvings or inscriptions, just the smooth, softly glowing material that defied easy categorization. It wasn't stone, metal, crystal, or any combination he recognized, yet it felt fundamentally familiar, as if he had always known it would exist. As he descended, Torkin noticed subtle changes in his perception. The tunnel seemed both longer and shorter than it physically could be, as if space itself was being gently folded. His footsteps made no sound at all, though he could feel the solid surface beneath his boots. The air grew neither warmer nor cooler, but achieved a perfect equilibrium that matched his body temperature exactly, creating the sensation that there was no boundary between himself and his surroundings. His breathing naturally slowed to an even deeper rhythm, each inhale bringing extraordinary clarity, each exhale releasing any remaining tension. The balanced energies of iron, silver, and gold continued to flow through him, now joined by this new white radiance that seemed to harmonize and elevate them all. After walking for what might have been minutes or hours, time itself becoming fluid in this transitional space, Torkin sensed that he was approaching his destination. The spiral path leveled out, and ahead he could see the tunnel opening into a larger space. A soft, pulsing light emanated from beyond, calling to him with gentle insistence. He emerged into a perfectly spherical chamber, perhaps 60 feet in diameter. Every surface was composed of the same unidentifiable material as the tunnel, though here it seemed more transparent, as if the boundaries between solid matter and space were becoming permeable. The chamber appeared to be suspended within the living rock of the mountain, connected to it, yet somehow separate, existing in a space that was both physical and something more. At the precise centre of this sphere, floating without visible support, was a crystal unlike any Torkin had ever seen, roughly the size of 2 clenched fists together. It had no definite shape, or rather, its shape was constantly shifting between all possible crystalline formations, never settling on any single one. Its colour likewise defied description, sometimes appearing clear as the purest water, other times containing all colours simultaneously, occasionally seeming to bend light in ways that created hues Torkin had no names for. This, without question, was the mountain stone. The crystal pulsed with inner light that synchronized perfectly with Torkin's heartbeat. Each pulse sent ripples of energy throughout the spherical chamber, creating patterns in the air itself, geometric forms that appeared momentarily before dissolving back into potential. The air was charged with vibrant stillness, a paradoxical quality that felt both absolutely peaceful and intensely alive. Torkin stood at the edge of the chamber, allowing his senses to adjust to this extraordinary environment. There was no sense of danger here, but rather an invitation into the chamber. As he did, the floating crystal responded, its pulsations becoming more pronounced, its shifting forms slowing temporarily, as if focusing attention on his presence. Torkin realised he was being acknowledged, not as Prince of Irondeep or heir to Durin's throne, but simply as himself, a conscious being entering into relationship with something far older and vaster than individual identity. Moving with intuitive certainty, Torkin walked to the centre of the spherical space. Gravity seemed lighter here, his steps becoming almost floating as he approached the mountain stone. When he stood directly beneath it, the crystal descended slowly until it hovered at eye level before him. Up close, the stone was even more extraordinary. Within its constantly shifting form, Torkin could see suggestions of landscapes, faces, mathematical patterns, and flowing energies, as if it contained reflections of all possible expressions of matter and consciousness. The light it emitted was not merely physical, but seemed to illuminate his thoughts, making them more transparent to himself. Without conscious decision, Torkin raised his hands, palms upward in a gesture of receptivity. The mountain stone responded, descending further until it rested just above his open hands, not touching them, but close enough that he could feel its energy as tangible warmth and subtle vibration. In this moment of perfect stillness and attention, communication began, not through words or images, but through direct transmission of understanding. The mountain stone was indeed the heart of Mount Carador, not merely symbolically, but literally, a nexus point where the mountain's vast consciousness could interface with individual awareness. It had existed long before dwarves had discovered this place, and it would continue long after. Durin had found it by accident during his deepest explorations, and it had changed him profoundly. The mountain stone had shared with him an understanding of the living nature of stone itself, not living as plants or animals live, but conscious in a different mode, operating on timescales that made even dwarven lifespans seem momentary. This understanding had transformed Durin's approach to mining and building, leading to the practices of stone listening and harmonious excavation that had allowed Irondeep to grow without damaging the mountain's essential nature. But the mountain stone offered more than just practical knowledge. It provided perspective, the ability to see challenges and conflicts from beyond the limitations of personal or cultural viewpoint. This was why Durin had created the key with its 3 balance components, and why he had hidden it away. Such perspective was valuable only to those who had developed the capacity to use it wisely, who could hold paradox without forcing resolution, who could see patterns across time without losing connection to present responsibility. As these understandings flowed into him, Torkin felt his consciousness expanding. He remained fully himself, yet simultaneously experienced the mountain's vast awareness, feeling the countless lives that dwelled within its embrace, sensing the slow pulse of geological processes, touching the memory of eons stored within layered stone. The current challenges facing Irondeep appeared within this expanded context, not insignificant, but part of larger cycles of growth, adaptation, and renewal. The dispute between Lord Grimine and Lady Vorna regarding the eastern tunnels revealed itself as an opportunity rather than merely a problem. From the mountain's perspective, the instability reported by the geomancers was not a warning of danger, but an invitation to discover new passages and chambers that would open naturally as part of the mountain's own development. Neither expansion nor ceiling was the answer, but rather attentive participation Bedtime's other challenges, trade relationships with surface dwellers, questions of succession, the balance between tradition and innovation all appeared in new light. None had simple solutions, but all could be approached with the balanced wisdom represented by the three-part key: the stability of structure, the fluidity of connection, and the continuity of preservation. The mountain stone pulsed with increasing brightness as these insights integrated within Torgin. Its light filled the spherical chamber completely, erasing all sense of boundary between himself and his surroundings. For a timeless moment, he experienced perfect unity with the mountain and all it contained, while paradoxically maintaining complete clarity about his individual identity and responsibilities. Then, gently, the light began to recede. The mountain stone rose slightly from his outstretched hands, resuming its position at the centre of the chamber. Torgin felt the expanded awareness begin to condense, not disappearing, but settling into a form he could carry with him beyond this special place. The insights and perspectives remained accessible, but no longer overwhelming in their immediacy. As his ordinary perception returned, Torgin noticed something had changed. The mountain stone had left behind a small fragment of itself, resting in his palms. This piece, about the size of his thumbnail, contained all the shifting complexity of the larger crystal, but in a form that could exist outside this chamber. It pulsed gently with inner light that matched his heartbeat perfectly. Understanding came without words. This fragment was both gift and responsibility. It would allow him to maintain connection with the mountain's wisdom when needed, serving as a reminder and focal point for the expanded awareness he had experienced. Yet it was not to be used casually or displayed as a symbol of status. Its purpose was to guide, not to rule. With deep gratitude, Torgin carefully placed the crystal fragment in an inner pocket close to his heart. It nestled there comfortably, its gentle pulse a reminder of the living mountain all around him. The main mountain stone, still hovering at the chamber's centre, pulsed once more in acknowledgement and farewell. Without words, Torgin knew that he could return here when truly necessary, but that most of what he needed had already been given. The chamber began to dim slightly, not in rejection, but in completion. This phase of communion was ending, having fulfilled its purpose. With a final look at the extraordinary crystal floating in perfect balance, Torgin turned and made his way back to the spiral tunnel through which he had entered. The ascent felt different from the descent, more grounded and purposeful, though the tunnel's structure remained unchanged. His experience of it had transformed. Each step carried him, not away from the mountain stone's wisdom, but into the opportunity to embody it in action and decision. His breathing continued deep and regular, his body moving with natural grace that reflected his inner harmony. When Torgin emerged once more into the meditation chamber, he found it transformed yet again. The statue of Durin had returned to its original position. The hidden passage closed seamlessly behind it, yet the quality of light had permanently changed. The blended radiance of blue, silver, and gold, now infused with subtle undertones of the mountain stone's indefinable white luminescence. The three-part key remained in place at the statue's base, and Torgin knew intuitively that it should stay there. Its purpose had been fulfilled, not just in opening the way to the mountain stone, but in preparing him through the journeys of discovery. Others might someday follow this path when need arose, but for now, the key would rest here, waiting. As he stepped back from the statue, What had seemed like hours might have been much longer. Hunger and thirst made themselves known, yet they felt distant and untroubling. More present was a profound sense of peace and purpose that flowed through him with each breath. He made his way back towards the kingdom's upper levels, carrying within him both the literal fragment of the mountain stone and the expanded awareness it represented. The tunnels and chambers of Iron Deep appeared to him now with enhanced clarity, not just as excavated spaces, but as expressions of relationship between dwarven need and the mountain's nature. He could see, in a way impossible to put into words, how some sections had been created in perfect harmony, while others showed subtle signs of imbalance that could be addressed through attentive care. When he reached the common plaza, Torgin found it busy with late afternoon activity. Dwarves moved about their business, some hurrying to complete tasks before evening, others gathering in small groups for conversation. As he crossed this familiar space, several people glanced his way, then looked again more intently. Though nothing in his external appearance had changed dramatically, something in his presence or bearing drew notice. An elderly craftsman Torgin had known since childhood approached him, bowing with traditional respect before speaking. "My prince, forgive my boldness, but there is something different about you today. You remind me of the old King Horin in his prime, who they said had walked with the mountain itself." Torgin smiled, feeling no need to explain or deflect. "Thank you, Master Callan. The mountain has many lessons for those willing to listen." The old dwarf's eyes widened slightly at this response, and he bowed again, more deeply. As Torgin continued across the plaza, he noticed others watching him, with similar expressions of curiosity and respect. The fragment of the mountain stone pulsed warmly against his chest, not calling for attention, but simply reminding him of the connection it represented. By the time Torgin reached the royal quarters, word of his changed demeanour had apparently preceded him. Garrick was waiting anxiously at the door to his chambers, relief washing over his face at the prince's appearance. "My prince, we've been concerned. You've been absent since early morning with no word of your whereabouts." The attendant's eyes studied him carefully. "Are you well? You seem different." "I am well, Garrick. Better than well." Torgin placed a reassuring hand on the older dwarf's shoulder. "I've been exploring some of the kingdom's oldest passages and learning things I needed to understand." Before Garrick could inquire further, a royal messenger approached at a dignified run. He bowed hastily before delivering his news. "Prince Torgin, the king is asking for you. He woke an hour ago with unusual vigour and clear speech. The healers are quite astonished." Torgin nodded, unsurprised. "Thank you. I'll go to him immediately." To Garrick he added, "Please have a light meal prepared. I'll take it after seeing my father." As Torgin made his way to the king's chambers, he felt the mountain stone fragment pulse in harmony with his steps. Somehow, he knew that his father's improvement was connected to his own experiences today. The mountain's awareness extending its balancing influence throughout the kingdom in subtle ways. King Dornin was sitting upright in his bed when Torgin entered. Colour returned to his face and clarity to his eyes. Though still thin and showing the marks of his long illness, the old dwarf appeared transformed from the frail figure of recent weeks. He smiled as his son approached, extending a hand in greeting. "Ah, there you are, my boy. Come sit with me. I've had the most extraordinary dream." Dornin's voice was stronger than it had been in months, resonant once more with the authority that had guided Iron Deep for generations. Tolkien took his father's hand, noting the renewed strength in the king's grip. The mountain stone fragment pulsed warmly against his chest as he sat in the chair beside the royal bed. "Tell me about this dream, father." Dornin's eyes took on a distant look, as if seeing beyond the stone walls around them. "I dreamed I was young again, walking the deepest tunnels of our kingdom. I came to a spherical chamber I had never seen before, though it felt strangely familiar." He focused suddenly on Torgin's face, and there you were, communing with a crystal that sang with the voice of the mountain itself. Torgin remained silent, simply holding his father's gaze with calm acknowledgement. After a moment, understanding dawned in the king's eyes. "It was no ordinary dream, was it?" Dornin asked softly. "You found the mountain stone. You followed the path that Durin himself walked." "Yes," Torgin replied simply. "The mountain called, and I listened." The king nodded slowly, a complex mixture of emotions crossing his weathered face. Pride, wonder, perhaps a touch of wistfulness. "I searched for it in my youth, found the meditation chamber, even sensed there was more to discover there, but never perceived the key or how to find it." He smiled then, a smile of genuine peace. "It wasn't meant for me, it seems. The mountain chooses its own time and messenger. The key came in 3 parts," Torgin explained. "Iron for structure, silver for connection, gold for preservation. Each required its own journey of understanding." "And what did you learn, my son, when you finally stood before the heart of Bars, our mountain?" There was no jealousy in the question, only sincere interest and fatherly pride. Torgin considered how to express the ineffable experience in words. "I learned that our kingdom is more than the tunnels and chambers we've carved, more than our history or traditions or crafts. It's a relationship between our people and the living mountain that shelters us. When that relationship is in balance, both flourish. When it falters, both suffer." He went on to share some of the specific insights regarding the kingdom's challenges: the eastern tunnels, the questions of succession, the balance of tradition and innovation. As he spoke, the king listened with increasing attention and clarity, occasionally nodding in recognition or asking perceptive questions. "These are not simple solutions," Torgin concluded, "but rather new perspectives from which solutions may emerge naturally through balanced consideration and proper relationship." King Dornin reached out and clasped his son's hand again. "You speak with the voice of a true king now, not commanding but discerning, not forcing but allowing wisdom to reveal itself." His eyes grew bright with unshed tears. "I have waited long to hear this voice from you, though I did not know precisely what I was waiting for." "I'm not ready to be king," Torgin said, though without the uncertainty that would have coloured these words only days ago. "No one truly is," his father replied with a chuckle. "But you are prepared in ways I never was. The mountain has recognised you, and that is worth more than any coronation ceremony we could devise." They sat together in comfortable silence for a time. The only sounds, the crackling of the hearth fire and their synchronised breathing. Torgin felt a deep peace flowing between them, enhanced by the gentle pulse of the mountain stone fragment against his heart. "I believe I will recover now," the king finally said, his voice matter-of-fact rather than hopeful or uncertain. "There is more work for me to do before I join our ancestors, and there is much I should teach you while I still can. Not about ruling, for the mountain has taught you that better than I could, but about the smaller things, the daily practices, that maintain balance even in ordinary moments. I would value that greatly, Torgin replied with genuine warmth. After leaving his father resting comfortably, Torgin returned to his own chambers where Garrick had prepared a simple but nourishing meal. He ate mindfully, savouring each bite with enhanced awareness. The complex flavours of root vegetables grown in specially designed caverns, the richness of mushrooms cultivated in the kingdom's fungal gardens, the subtle sweetness of honey collected from hives kept near the mountain surface entrances. Each food connected him to the network of relationships that sustain the kingdom. Each bite a reminder of interdependence and balance. Following his meal, Torgin felt called to visit one more place before completing his day. Taking a small lantern, he made his way to one of Iron Deep's lesser-used exits, a narrow tunnel that emerged halfway up Mount Carador's eastern face. Few dwarves ventured outside regularly, but Torgin had always found value in occasionally viewing the kingdom from without as well as within. The exit portal was disguised as a natural rock formation, visible as a door only from the inside. Torgin operated the cleverly designed mechanism that allowed passage, stepping out onto a small ledge as the portal sealed seamlessly behind him. The evening air greeted him with cool freshness, carrying the sense of pine forest and distant snow. From this vantage point, he could see for miles across the valley below and to the neighbouring peaks. The sun was setting, painting the western sky in brilliant hues of orange and gold, while the eastern horizon deepened to indigo. Stars were beginning to appear in the darkening vault above, eternal and unchanging, yet constantly in motion. Torgin settled himself comfortably on the stone ledge, his back against the mountain's solid presence. The mountain stone fragment pulsed, in harmony with both his heartbeat and some deeper rhythm within the living rock behind him. As darkness gathered more fully, he found his awareness expanding outward once again, not as dramatically as in the spherical chamber, but with similar quality. He could sense the mountain's vast body all around and beneath him, the countless lives it sheltered both within and upon its slopes. The dwarven kingdom was just one of many communities for which Carador provided home and sustenance, from the pine martens that lived among the high branches to the microscopic organisms that broke down stone into soil in hidden crevices. All were connected in a complex web of relationship, giving and receiving in continuous exchange. From this perspective, the specific challenges that had seemed so pressing a few days ago remained important, but no longer appeared overwhelming. They were moments in a much longer story, opportunities for growth rather than existential threats. With the balanced wisdom of iron, silver and gold, structure, connection and preservation, these challenges could be met in ways that strengthened rather than weakened the whole. As full night embraced the mountain, Torgin remained seated in peaceful contemplation. The stars wheeled slowly overhead, their ancient light a reminder of continuity amid change. The cool air filled his lungs with each inhale, connecting him to the wider world beyond the mountain. The solid stone supported his body completely, grounding him in present reality, even as his awareness expanded to include greater wholes. Eventually, when the moon had risen high enough to cast silver light across the valley, Torgin rose to return inside. He felt pleasantly heavy now, his body ready for the deep rest it deserved after the day's extraordinary journey. Yet his mind remained crystal clear, holding both the specific details of his experiences and their larger significance in perfect balance. As he operated the hidden mechanism already retired for the night, leaving the grand halls and corridors peaceful and still. The light from wall sconces created gentle pools of warm illumination, with soft shadows between them. His footsteps were nearly silent on the smooth stone floors, his breathing deep and even, his body moving with natural grace that reflected his inner harmony. The fragment of the mountain stone pulsed gently against his chest, synchronizing with his heartbeat and the subtle vibrations of the living mountain all around him. Each step carried him deeper into this awareness of connection, each breath reinforcing the balance he had discovered through his three-part journey. The wisdom of iron, silver, and gold had become part of him now. Structure providing stability, connection creating flow, preservation maintaining continuity amidst change. When he finally reached his chambers, Torgin found them prepared for restful sleep. Lamps dimmed to a soothing glow, bed linens turned down invitingly, a cup of night tea cooling on the bedside table. Garrick had attended to these details with his usual care, intuiting his prince's need for peaceful solitude. This evening, Torgin removed his outer garments, the movement slow and mindful, the familiar weight of fabric sliding from his shoulders, the pleasant sensation of cooler air against his skin, the subtle sounds of cloth folding. All these ordinary experiences took on new significance through his heightened awareness. Even the simplest actions could be performed with full attention, bringing richness to routine. He sipped the night tea, a special blend of chamomile, valerian, and a rare moss that grew only in Iron Deep's highest caverns. Its taste was earthy and complex, with notes of honey and stone, and its warmth spread through his chest in expanding circles of comfort. The herbs would help ease his body towards sleep, though his mind already rested in perfect clarity and peace. As he settled into bed, Torgin placed the mountain stone fragment on the small table beside him. Even without physical contact, he could feel its gentle presence, pulsing with the same rhythm as his own heart. Its soft glow created shifting patterns on the ceiling above, reminiscent of the extraordinary visions he had experienced in the spherical chamber. Laying his head on the cool pillow, Torgin felt the pleasant heaviness of his body sinking into the mattress. His muscles relaxed completely, tension flowing out of him like water seeping into sand. The events of the day arranged themselves in his mind, not as scattered fragments, but as a coherent whole, each experience flowing naturally into the next in perfect sequence. Tomorrow would bring new responsibilities, council meetings to attend, the dispute between Lord Grayman and Lady Vorna to address with fresh insight, time with his recovering father to cherish. But tonight was for rest, for integration, for the deep renewal that comes through complete surrender to sleep's embrace. As his breathing slowed and deepened further, Torgin felt himself expanding once more beyond the boundaries of his physical form, not dramatically as in the chamber of the mountain stone, but gently, naturally, his awareness becoming diffuse and peaceful. The solid stone walls around him, the mountain's vast body beyond, the kingdom sleeping within its protective embrace, all became part of his experience, held in the perfect balance of consciousness, transitioning toward dreams. With each slow exhale, Torgin released a little more of his hold on waking awareness. With each inhale, he welcomed the approach of sleep's healing depths. The rhythmic pulse of the mountain stone fragment guided this gentle transition, its soft light dimming gradually as his eyelids grew heavy and finally closed. In the space between waking and sleeping, Torgin glimpsed once more the three paths he had travelled: blue iron, silver water, golden flame, now unified in perfect harmony within his heart. The wisdom they had revealed would remain accessible to him, not as separate pieces of knowledge, but as an integrated understanding that would inform his every decision and action. As sleep claimed him fully, Torgin's last conscious thought was one of profound gratitude for the mountain's guidance, for the legacy of ancestors who had listened before him, for the opportunity to serve his kingdom from this new place of balance and clarity. Then even this thought dissolved into the warm darkness of deep rest, his breathing steady and peaceful, his body complete